Commander Jake Harrison stood at the large window of the space station, looking out at the stars. He watched as the alien ships came closer to Earth. This was the third time this month they had shown up. He let out a long breath and ran his hand through his gray hair. "They are back again," Lieutenant Kate Morrison said from her workstation. Her voice sounded tired. Everyone on the station felt the same way. "Let me guess," Jake said without turning around. "Same ships, same angry moves, same demands?" "Yes, sir. They are sending the usual message. They say we must surrender our world to the Galactic Collective or they will destroy us." Jake finally turned to look at his crew. He saw the tired looks on every face. It had been 6 months since the Collective first came to Earth. They believed that humans were just another weak species that they could easily conquer. What they did not know was that humans had a different way of doing things. Humans like to watch, wait, and prepare quietly. "Should we answer them, Commander?" asked Lieutenant Dan Cooper from the communications desk. "Send them our usual reply," Jake said as he sat down in his command chair. "Tell them no thank you. Offer to talk in peace. Remind them that we have asked them nicely to leave 17 times now." The crew looked at each other with knowing eyes. Everyone on the station knew the real truth that the aliens could not seem to understand. Humans had been traveling in space for almost 200 years. They had colonies on 40 different star systems. They had technology that made their ships invisible to collective sensors. They had weapons that could break planets apart if they needed to use them. But they also had something the collective clearly did not have. They had patience and control. Captain Linda Gray's voice came through the speaker from the defense area. "Commander, we can see their main ship. Same old design from the Draxians. Same old tactics. They are getting ready for another show of force." "Let them do their show," Jake said back. "Just make sure our recording machines get everything. People in the future will want to see this." The collective fleet started firing bright plasma bolts into empty space. It looked impressive but did not hurt anything. Jake opened the secret files on his personal screen. The information was clear. Humans had found 247 weak points in the collective forces. They had developed ways to stop every weapon the collective had. They had mapped every supply line and colony world in the collective empire. But humans were not attacking. Not yet. Maybe not ever, if they could avoid it. "Sir, they are calling us again," Kate said. "The Draxian commander wants to speak with you directly." "Put him on the screen." The main screen lit up and showed Commander Zracht. He was a tall alien that looked like a reptile with bronze scales and 4 yellow eyes. He had the same proud look he wore every time they talked. "Primitive human," Zracht started. His words came through a translator that made his voice sound strange. "This is your final warning. Submit to the collective, or we will show you our full military power." Jake leaned forward a little. His face was calm and looked almost like a parent talking to a child. "Commander Zracht, with respect, we have talked about this before. We are not interested in joining your collective. We are not interested in fighting you either. We just want you to leave our space in peace. You dare refuse the greatest empire in the galaxy?" Zracht's scales turned darker with anger. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds." "I am sure you have," Jake said gently, like he was speaking to an excited child. "And that is very impressive. But we are not like those other species. Please, just go home. We are not mad at you, but we are getting disappointed." Zracht pulled back as if someone had hit him. In his culture, having an enemy express disappointment made no sense. "You will regret your pride, human." The transmission ended suddenly. Kate turned in her chair. "Do you think they will actually attack this time, sir?" "Probably not," Jake said as he looked at the data about the collective fleet. "Their plan for invasion does not include what to do with species that refuse to be scared but also refuse to shoot first. It confuses them." "So we just keep watching?" Dan asked. "We keep watching," Jake said. "And we keep recording every threat, every move, every mistake they make. When they finally understand what we really are, they will be grateful we were patient." On the view screen, the collective fleet was already starting to move away. just like it had 16 times before. Jake made a note in his log. Day 186 of the collective's attempted intimidation. Still not working. Humanity remains unimpressed but hopeful for peaceful outcome. Lieutenant Morrison smiled a little. How long do you think it will take them to figure it out? Sir? That we could have ended this on day 1? Jake lifted his shoulders. Hard to say. The collective has conquered so many species through fear that they cannot recognize when they are facing someone who is not afraid. They just see our control as weakness. Should we show them what we can do? Dan suggested. No, Jake said firmly. That is not who we are. We do not need to prove ourselves through violence. Let them keep making wrong guesses. Let them keep thinking we are weak. Meanwhile, we will keep watching, learning everything about them, and hoping they will eventually come to talk like adults. He stood and walked to the window, watching the collective ships move away into the distance. Somewhere out there, in the huge network of human colonies and defense stations, thousands of ships waited in the shadows. Weapons that could end the collective as a threat stayed safely turned off. Humanity's true strength stayed carefully hidden. You know what the real difference is between us and them? Jake said quietly. They see strength as the ability to destroy. We see it as the wisdom to choose not to. Yes, sir, Kate agreed. But sir, what if they never learn? What if they keep making things worse? Jake's face grew serious. Then we will deal with it when we need to. 3 months had passed since the first incident. The collective's attempts to scare humans had become almost normal. In a meeting room deep inside the Lunar Command Center, a group of humanity's top military and diplomatic minds came together for their weekly meeting. Admiral Frank Peterson opened the meeting in his usual direct way. All right. Let's hear it. What did our guests do this week? Commander Jake Harrison was there through a hologram from the space station. He pulled up the latest reports. Tuesday, they did another weapons show at the Mars border. Wednesday, they sent people to our outer colonies asking for payment. Thursday, they tried to block ships around Europa. And what did we do? Asked Ambassador Helen Martinez. She was humanity's chief diplomatic officer. Same as always, Jake replied. We said no politely. We moved them away from civilian areas. We kept watching. Not a single shot fired on our end. Dr. Richard Hayes was the head of the study of alien species. He leaned forward with interest. This is amazing. In all my research, I have never seen a species so sure of their own power that they cannot recognize a stronger force, even when it is right in front of them. It is not about being better, Helen corrected gently. It is just different goals. The collective measures progress by conquest. We measure it by control and knowledge. Well, they are certainly giving us plenty to study, Richard said. He turned on a display showing the collective's military setup. We now have complete information on their command structure, supply chains, technology, and battle plans. If this were a test, they would be failing badly. Colonel Amy Chen was the Tactical Operations Director. She spoke up. With respect, doctors and ambassadors, at some point watching becomes helping them. They are not learning. They are getting bolder. Define bolder, Frank challenged. Last week they fired on one of our survey drones, Amy said. This week, they are making threats against civilian transport ships. The pattern of increase is clear, but they have not actually hurt anyone, Helen pointed out. Every time they get close to crossing that line, they pull back. It is like they know, on some level, that they are playing with fire. Jake nodded in agreement. I have been watching Commander Zracht closely. There is doubt in his eyes. He follows the collective's plan because it is all he knows, but he is starting to realize it is not working. Then maybe it is time to help him understand why, suggested Dr. Patricia Lee. She was a cultural expert who had been studying the collective's social structures. What if we invited them to see something we can do? Not a threat, just a gentle reality check. The room became quiet as everyone thought about the idea. What kind of demonstration? Frank asked carefully. Patricia brought up pictures showing humanity's actual defensive abilities. All of this was still secret from the collective. Nothing aggressive. We could invite them to watch one of our construction projects. Let them see a heavy industrial ship move an asteroid. Show them our work changing Titan's environment. Let them see the size of what we can do, without being mean about it. That could make things worse, Amy warned. It might make them attack us for real. Or it might make them think twice, Helen countered. Right now, they see us as a puzzle. A species that should be afraid, but is not. If we give them context, they might choose wisdom over pride. Jake thought about the options. There is a third possibility. They might see any display of ability as a threat and attack with everything they have. Which brings us back to the basic question, Frank said. His old face was serious. How long do we keep this up? How long do we let them test our borders, make threats, and waste our resources watching them? As long as it takes, Helen said firmly. Because the other option is showing them exactly why they should have been afraid. And once we do that, there is no going back. Richard pulled up historical data from Earth's own past. Every time a more advanced civilization met a less advanced one on Earth, the results were terrible for someone. Either the advanced civilization conquered, or they were forced to defend themselves with too much force. We are trying to write a different story here. A story where the strong protect the weak, not use them, Patricia added. Even when the weak are actively threatening us. That is a nice idea, Amy said, not unkindly. But what happens when ideas meet a plasma weapon aimed at a colony ship full of families? Then we respond the right way, Jake said quietly. But until that line is crossed, we stay in position. We watch. We learn. And we hope they are smarter than they are currently acting. Frank stood up, showing the debate was over. All right. We agree to continue current plans. No increase on our end. But I want backup plans updated every week. If they do force our hand, I want our response to be exact, balanced, and final. Understood, everyone said together. As the meeting ended, Helen caught up with Jake's hologram. You are doing good work up there, Commander. I know it is not easy, showing control day after day. It is easier than the other option, Jake replied. Every morning I wake up knowing that thousands of people are alive, because we chose patience over pride. That is worth the frustration. Just remember, Helen said softly. Disappointment does not mean we are weak. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Back on the space station, Jake returned to his command chair and pulled up the latest watching feeds. The collective fleet had taken up position near Jupiter, running what looked like combat practice. They were preparing for something, probably another attempt to scare humans. Kate came over with a datapad. Sir, intelligence has decoded some of their internal communications. It is interesting. Jake read the words. His eyebrows went up. The collective commanders were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to make things worse. Others were beginning to question whether humans were what they appeared to be. A few were even suggesting they retreat and think again. They are starting to doubt themselves, Kate observed. Good, Jake said. Doubt leads to questions. Questions lead to understanding. Maybe there is hope for them yet. That night, as Earth turned below the station in peaceful beauty, it started like any other day. Jake was looking at reports when every alarm on the station suddenly screamed to life. Multiple collective ships breaking from their group, Kate shouted over the noise. They are heading directly for the civilian transport lanes near Earth. Jake's calm manner disappeared. Get me Admiral Peterson. Now. Within seconds, Frank's face appeared on screen. I see it, Commander. This is different from their usual actions. They are not slowing down, Dan reported. His voice was tight with worry. Their path suggests they are going to hit the passenger liner, Horizon. 3,000 civilians on board, including families. For 9 months, humanity had watched and waited. For 9 months, they had shown control in the face of threats. But threatening civilians was the line no one was allowed to cross. What is the status of our defense fleet? Jake demanded. Ready and waiting for your orders, sir, came Captain Linda Gray's voice. We can stop them in 90 seconds. Jake looked at the tactical display. The collective ships were still speeding toward the civilian transport. Their weapons were charging. Every second counted. "This is it," Frank said quietly. "The moment we hoped would not come." "What do you recommend?" Jake asked, though he already knew what had to be done. "Protect our people," Frank said without pause. "No more watching. No more waiting." Jake took a breath. He felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. 9 months of control. 9 months of hope. All ending now because the collective could not recognize mercy when it was offered. "All units," he said. His voice carried across every channel in human space. "Defensive protocol Sierra is now active. Protect the horizon. Non-lethal force is allowed. Lethal force is allowed if civilians are directly threatened." What happened next would be studied in military schools for generations. The space around Earth, which seemed empty seconds before, suddenly came alive with activity. Hundreds of ships appeared at the same time. Their hiding systems turned off in a planned display that changed empty space into a defensive grid. Each ship had been there all along, watching and waiting in complete silence. The collective ships suddenly found themselves surrounded by a fleet that had 50 times more ships than they did. They stopped their advance immediately. "Call them," Jake ordered. "Let's give them one last chance." Commander Zrakth appeared on screen. For the first time, Jake saw real fear in those 4 yellow eyes. "Commander Zrakth," Jake said. His voice carried a weight it had not held before. "For 9 months, we have asked you nicely to leave. We have shown control. We have offered peace. And how did you respond? By threatening 3,000 innocent people. We did not know." Zrakth stammered. His translator struggled with his fast speech. "Your fleets. We never detected." "Of course you did not," Jake interrupted. "Did you really think we were defenseless? Did you honestly believe a species that asked you to leave peacefully was unable to make you leave?" On the tactical display, more ships continued to appear as they dropped their hiding fields. There were huge warships larger than anything in the collective fleet. There were carrier groups that could project power across entire star systems. There were weapon platforms that made the collective's technology look old by comparison. "We are not mad at you," Jake continued, using the same words he had said so many times before. "We are just disappointed. Deeply, truly disappointed." Ambassador Helen Martinez's face appeared in a smaller window. "Commander Harrison, I am giving you permission to show them everything. Let them understand what they have been testing." "Understood," Jake said. He turned back to Zrakth. "You wanted to see our military power? Here it is." The displays lit up with information feeds, showing the full size of human civilization. 40 colonized star systems. Thousands of ships. Defensive platforms around every inhabited world. Manufacturing capacity that was bigger than the collective's entire industrial base. Energy weapons that could sterilize planets. Mass drivers that could speed up asteroids to almost light speed. "This is what you have been threatening," Jake said quietly. "This is what showed you patience instead of power. This is what asked you 19 times to simply leave in peace." Zrakth's scales had gone pale. "Why? Why did you not destroy us immediately?" "We would have, in your position." "I know you would have," Jake replied. "That is the difference between us. We could have ended this on day 1. We could have destroyed your fleet before you even knew we were there. But we chose to believe you might be capable of wisdom. We chose to hope you would see reason before it came to this." The collective commander seemed to shrink in his command chair. "What? What will you do to us now?" Jake looked at Admiral Peterson, who nodded slightly. "We are going to do what we have been doing all along," Jake said. "Give you a choice. Leave our space peacefully, and this ends here. No revenge, no chase, no hard feelings, or continue down this path, and you will learn exactly why the other species you conquered were so afraid." "But you said you were disappointed, not angry," Zrakth said weakly. "Disappointed parents still punish children who refuse to learn," Jake replied. "We gave you every chance to walk away. The question is, are you finally ready to take it?" The collective fleet hung in space, completely surrounded, completely outmatched, and finally understanding the full scope of their mistake. In the command centers throughout human space, military people waited with weapons armed and ready. Not eager, not excited. Just prepared to do what was needed to protect innocent lives. I need to talk with the collective council, Zrakth said finally. You have 1 hour, Jake replied. After that, we will consider any ship remaining in our space to be hostile and act accordingly. The transmission ended. Kate let out a breath she had been holding. Sir, do you think they will actually leave? I do not know, Jake admitted. But we have given them every chance. The rest is up to them. Across human civilization, people watched the standoff with mixed emotions. They felt pride in their defenders. They felt sadness that it had come to this. But they also felt a quiet satisfaction that humanity had tried everything possible to avoid bloodshed before showing their teeth. 58 minutes later, the collective fleet began moving away from Earth space, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Within an hour, they had left the Sol system entirely. Jake watched them go, feeling both relief and a lingering sadness. Keep watching, he ordered. I want to know if they are really leaving, or just regrouping. But as the hours passed, and the collective ships continued their retreat, it became clear that the immediate crisis had passed. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Jake received a secret message from an unexpected source. It was Commander Zrakth himself. This is highly unusual, Ambassador Helen said when Jake reported the contact. The collective does not usually talk directly outside formal channels. Should I answer? Jake asked. Absolutely. Let's see what he wants. The transmission was audio only. Zrakth's voice sounded different from before. It was less commanding and more uncertain. Commander Harrison, I am contacting you without permission from the Collective Council. What I say now could be considered treason by my government. Then why risk it? Jake asked carefully. There was a long pause. Because I need to understand. My entire career, I have studied war. I have conquered 17 worlds on behalf of the collective. I understand tactics, strategy, intimidation, and destruction. But I do not understand you. Jake leaned back in his chair, interested. What do you not understand? Why did you wait? Zrakth's voice carried real confusion. You had the power to destroy us from the beginning. In collective doctrine, the strong control the weak immediately. It is the natural order. But you showed control. You asked us to leave. 19 times, you asked. Why? Because we hoped you would listen, Jake replied simply. Because we have learned that power does not make you right. Having the ability to destroy does not mean you should use it. But we threatened you. We bothered your people. We fired weapons in your space. In our culture, such actions demand immediate and overwhelming response. In our culture, Jake said slowly, the strongest thing you can do is choose not to fight when fighting would be easy. Another long silence. Then, the collective council is divided. Some want to return with a larger fleet. Others want to leave human space entirely and never return. A few, including myself, want to understand before we decide anything. Understand what? How a species becomes what you are, Zrakth said. Strong enough to conquer but choosing not to. Advanced enough to hide your true abilities but patient enough to reveal them only when needed. We thought you were primitive and fearful. We were wrong about everything. Dr. Richard Hayes was listening to the conversation from Earth. He sent a text message to Jake saying this could be a historic opportunity. Jake agreed. Commander Zrakth, what if I told you that humanity was not always this way? That we had to learn these lessons through terrible mistakes and painful growth? End quote. I would ask you to teach me, Zrakth replied immediately. Not for tactical advantage, for understanding. And if I do, will the collective actually listen? Or will they use the knowledge to find better ways to threaten us? I cannot speak for the entire collective, Zrakth admitted. But I can promise that I am listening. And perhaps, if I understand, I can help others understand as well. Over the next several weeks, something unprecedented developed. It was a dialogue. Not an official diplomatic exchange, but a series of conversations between Jake and Zracht. Two military commanders from very different cultures were trying to bridge a gap that war could not cross. Jake shared humanity's history. The wars that nearly destroyed Earth. The lessons learned in Blood and Fire. The painful evolution from tribal thinking to global cooperation, eventually to peaceful expansion into space. Zracht shared the collective's perspective. Their rigid hierarchy. Their belief that the universe was hostile and only the strong survived. Their conviction that showing mercy was showing weakness. In the collective, we are taught from hatching that the universe has only two types of species, Zracht explained one day. The conquered and the conquerors. There is no concept of equals who choose not to fight. Then let us be that concept, Jake suggested. Let us show your collective that there is a third option. Civilizations that are strong enough to protect themselves, but wise enough to prefer peace. These conversations were reported to the highest levels of both human government and collective leadership. Reactions were mixed. Admiral Peterson supported the dialogue. If we can solve this with words instead of weapons, we should try. Colonel Amy Chen remained doubtful. He could be gathering intelligence for the next attack. Ambassador Helen was carefully hopeful. Cultural change does not happen overnight, but it has to start somewhere. Meanwhile, in collective space, Zracht faced his own challenges. Several council members accused him of being corrupted by human propaganda. Others demanded his immediate return and trial for unauthorized communication with an enemy. But a smaller group, led by Elder Counselor Vrix, saw potential in what Zracht was learning. Perhaps, Vrix suggested in a closed council session, we have been approaching the galaxy incorrectly. Perhaps there is strength in methods other than conquest. Heresy, said War Counselor Drax with anger. The collective's power is built on military dominance. Any change from that principle weakens us all. Does it? Vrix challenged. We now know that humans have military power, far exceeding our own. Yet they chose not to use it. They could have destroyed our fleet, but instead gave us time to reconsider. Is that weakness, or a form of strength we simply do not understand? The debate raged through collective leadership. Zracht's unauthorized conversations became a flashpoint for deeper questions about their civilization's direction. Back on Earth, Dr. Patricia Lee prepared a detailed report on the cultural implications of the ongoing dialogue. What we are witnessing, she told a gathering of human leaders, is nothing less than a potential change in thinking for an entire civilization. The collective's worldview is being challenged at its foundation. The question is, Helen added, whether they will adapt and grow or dig in and make things worse. Jake, still conducting his regular conversations with Zracht, noticed changes in the collective commander's thinking. I have been studying your historical records, Zracht said during one exchange. You had a period called the Cold War, where two powerful groups possessed weapons capable of destroying all life on your planet. Yes, Jake confirmed. A dangerous time, but you did not destroy each other. Instead, you eventually found ways to cooperate. How? It took time, Jake explained, and several close calls that scared us into wisdom. We realized that being able to destroy each other did not mean we should. That survival meant finding common ground, not removing the opposition. The collective has no concept of this, Zracht said quietly. We have always removed opposition. It is our way. Quote, we have our way. Was your way, Jake corrected gently. Ways can change. We are proof of that. But at what cost? How many of your people died learning these lessons? Too many, Jake admitted. Which is why we are trying to help you learn them, without repeating our mistakes. Zracht was silent for a long moment. You are still disappointed in us, are you not? Yes, Jake said honestly. But disappointment means we still have hope for you. If we did not think you could be better, we would not bother. Like a parent with a wayward child? Something like that. In collective culture, there are no parents, Zracht revealed. Our young are raised in groups, taught obedience, and military doctrine from the moment they can understand language. Family bonds, as you understand them, do not exist for us. That revelation prompted a lot of analysis from human experts. Dr. Patricia L. 6 months after the confrontation, something remarkable happened. The Collective Council requested a formal diplomatic meeting with human representatives. Ambassador Helen Martinez led the human delegation. She arrived at the designated neutral space station with a security detail that remained carefully hidden. Trust was growing, but wisdom still demanded caution. Elder Counselor Vrix headed the collective delegation. The elderly alien moved slowly. His scales were dull with age, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. Ambassador Martinez, Vrix began, speaking through a translator. We have much to discuss. The negotiations that followed were unlike any in human history. The collective was not seeking terms of surrender or planning new attacks. Instead, they wanted to learn. We have observed your civilization for these months, Vrix explained. Not just your military capability, though that is impressive. We have studied your culture, your philosophy, your history, and we find ourselves confused. Confused about what? Helen asked. About how you became strong without becoming cruel. In our understanding, power and compassion are incompatible, yet you show both. Helen smiled gently. Then your understanding is incomplete. We would be happy to help you expand it. Over the following weeks, something unprecedented occurred. It was a knowledge exchange. Human teachers, including Dr. Patricia Lee and Dr. Richard Hayes, traveled to collective space to give lectures on human development, ethics, and social structures. Collective scholars came to human universities to study philosophy, psychology, and history. Commander Zrakth, now officially reassigned as a cultural liaison, worked closely with Jake Harrison to develop military protocols based on control rather than aggression. My warriors do not understand, Zrakth confessed one day. They are trained to attack, conquer, dominate. When I tell them our new doctrine emphasizes measured response and balanced force, they look at me as if I speak madness. It is a kind of madness, Jake agreed. The madness of hoping for something better than endless conflict. But it is a madness your people are capable of learning, just as we learned it. Not everyone in either civilization was happy with the changes. Some collective military leaders attempted a takeover, arguing that Vrix was weakening their empire. Human isolationists demanded that all contact with the collective cease. They were convinced it was all an elaborate trick, but both attempts failed. They were pushed back by growing numbers of people on both sides who saw the value in this new relationship. The breakthrough came when a third party threatened both civilizations. The Ravagers were a truly hostile species bent on consuming resources without regard for sentient life. They attacked a collective mining colony on the border of human space. For the first time in their history, the collective sent a request for help rather than a demand for submission. Jake received the message directly from Zrakth. Commander Harrison, we need help. The Ravagers are overwhelming our defenses. We are not asking as conquerors. We are asking as those who hope to become friends. The human response was immediate. Admiral Peterson authorized deployment of defense forces, not to take over the collective colony, but to fight alongside them. The battle was brief but intense. Human ships, with their advanced hiding technology and weapons, combined with collective forces who knew the local terrain and enemy tactics. Together, they drove off the Ravagers with minimal casualties on either side. In the aftermath, Zrakth stood on the command deck of his ship alongside Captain Linda Gray. They looked at the damage together. You saved us, Zrakth said quietly. You had no obligation, but you came anyway. That is what friends do, Linda replied simply. We protect each other. Friends. Zrakth repeated the word, as if testing its weight. Yes. I think I finally understand that concept. The joint defense against the Ravagers changed the relationship between humanity and the collective. What began as a tense standoff had evolved into cautious cooperation. Now, it was growing into genuine alliance. Back on Earth, Jake received a personal message from Admiral Peterson. Commander Harrison, we are recommending you for a new position. Ambassador to the Collective. You started this relationship. You should help guide it. I am a soldier, not a diplomat, Jake protested. You are someone who had the wisdom to be disappointed rather than angry, Peterson replied. That is the kind of leadership this new age needs. Jake accepted the position. He became the first human to take up permanent residence in collective space. His mission was simple. Continue teaching. Continue learning. Help both civilizations grow together. Ambassador Helen Martinez summed it up in her final report to the human government. We faced a choice when the collective first arrived. We could have responded with the overwhelming force we possessed. We could have proved our superiority through violence. Instead, we chose disappointment. We chose to express our hope that they could be better, even when they gave us every reason to believe otherwise. And that choice, that willingness to be patient and disappointed rather than angry and violent, may have saved two civilizations from unnecessary conflict. Dr. Patricia Lee added her own analysis. The collective is learning concepts they never had. Compassion, control, friendship, cooperation with equals. It will take generations for these ideas to fully integrate into their culture. But the process has begun. It began because humanity showed a strength they did not recognize. The strength of choosing peace, even when war would be easier. On the one-year anniversary of the confrontation, a joint ceremony was held in orbit around Earth. Human and collective ships flew in formation together. It was a display that would have seemed impossible months earlier. Commander Zrakth, now Ambassador Zrakth, stood beside Jake at the ceremony. Do you remember when you told me you were disappointed in us? Zrakth asked. I do, Jake confirmed. We still are, sometimes. You still have a long way to go. I know, Zrakth agreed. But we are trying. And we are learning. Is that enough? Jake smiled. It is a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need. As both species looked toward a future of cooperation rather than conflict, humanity maintained its watchful stance. They remained ready to defend themselves if necessary, but they also remained committed to the principle that had defined their response from the beginning: strength without cruelty, power without domination, the wisdom to be disappointed rather than destructive. The galaxy was slowly learning what humanity had already discovered. The strongest civilizations were not those who conquered the most worlds. They were those who built the most bridges, and sometimes, those bridges began with simple words. We are not mad, just disappointed and watching. But now, they were watching something new. The possibility that disappointment could inspire growth, that patience could foster change, that two vastly different civilizations could learn to stand together, not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals who chose cooperation over conflict. It was not the ending anyone had expected when the collective first arrived with threats and demands. But it was, perhaps, a better beginning than either side had dared to hope for. And humanity continued to watch. No longer disappointed, but hopeful for what both civilizations might become together. Throughout the galaxy, other species began to take notice. They saw the impossible relationship between humans and the collective. They saw strength tempered with mercy. They saw patience rewarded with change. And slowly, carefully, they began to wonder if there might be another way forward for all of them. The age of endless conquest was ending. A new age was beginning. An age where the disappointed watched over the learning. Where the strong protected the weak. Where civilizations chose to build rather than destroy. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and friends. Still watching. Still waiting. Still hoping that the galaxy could become something better than it had been. The future remained uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, it felt full of possibility rather than threat. And that, Jake thought as he looked out at the stars from his new post in collective space, was worth all the patience in the universe. He realized that the collective's aggressive behavior might come from a basic lack of nurturing relationships in their development. They have never experienced unconditional care, she explained to the research team. They have never known what it means to have someone be disappointed in them, because that someone actually cares about their well-being. So when we express disappointment, Richard added, we are introducing a completely foreign emotional concept to their civilization. Exactly. And Zrakth is responding to it because, perhaps for the first time in his life, he is experiencing something like concern from someone who is not trying to use or control him. This understanding shaped humanity's continued approach to the collective. Not as enemies to be destroyed or rivals to be defeated, but as a civilization in need of concepts they had never encountered before. The question remained: would the collective embrace these new ideas or reject them violently? Humanity watched and waited, disappointed but still hopeful, preparing for either outcome. Admiral Peterson contacted Jake personally. Well done, Commander. You showed them strength and mercy. That is not an easy balance. I'm pleased. Workly to heaven E2. Workly to heaven E2 but to heaven E2. I just wish we had not needed to show them strength at all. Jake replied. I know. But sometimes disappointment needs consequences to mean anything. As the defense fleet returned to hiding status, disappearing from sensors once more, humanity settled back into watchful waiting. But something had changed. The collective now knew what they faced. The question was whether they would learn from it or simply gather a larger force. Only time would tell if humanity's patience had taught a valuable lesson or simply delayed a fight that could not be avoided. Recorded his personal log entry. Day 275 of collective observation. Still no violence from our side. Still no understanding from theirs. But for the first time, I see cracks in their certainty. We remain watchful. We remain disappointed. But we also remain hopeful that wisdom will win over tradition. Throughout human space, millions of people went about their lives. They barely knew about the alien fleet that moved around their borders. They trusted their protectors to handle the situation with the same measured wisdom that had guided humanity through centuries of growth and expansion. And those protectors watched, waited, and wondered how long they could keep their watch before patience changed into something else entirely. But every day they do not force our hand is another day we prove that humanity grew past the need for casual violence. That is worth something. As the night cycle started on the station, the crew went back to their normal work. They watched the alien fleet leave. They wrote down their tactics. They added to the big database of collective behavior. In hundreds of hidden places throughout human space, scientists and military planners looked at the data. They were always preparing, always ready, but never eager for a fight. The message went out on secret channels to all human worlds. Collective contact, day 186. No change in status. Continue watching. Do not fight unless directly attacked. And humanity watched, disappointed but patient, like a parent waiting for a difficult child to learn an important lesson.